The Ward Scott Files is produced by Ward Scott Files, LLC.
Come on, everybody! Come on, everybody!
This is a Ward Scott Files advisory. The Ward Scott Files radio show may contain material not suited for people who are easily offended. Trust us on this. This show contains adult information and opinions. Please protect small children, sensitive pets, fragile houseplants, and liberal relatives. Thank you.
All right, good morning, good morning. Here we are, well, in a wet man cave today outside. It's not leaking in here. We don't have any buckets around anywhere, so we're in good shape here in the Warthog Man Cave. Professor Hogg here, Coach Hogg, all of the above. And, you know, if I tell you something, it's the truth unless I misspoke, and then you must have misunderstood or misheard. That's how it works. We're going to start out today with a full agenda for the show today. I mean, these things just pile up and pile up and pile up. You go to La La Land, you get up with the sun. Well, there's no sun today, but you get up with the rain, and all of a sudden a lot of stuff has happened, and you get in here and you sort of want to explain it to y'all. One thing I want to give applause to is to our investigator, whose picture is on the wall behind me right now. You see the Ward Scott Files covering it up, but that's okay. We don't really out him too much, but he's got some fantastic ties around the state, and people listen to him, take him seriously. And one of the places where he has been communicating lately is with Politico, and Politico is a tough outfit. It's a national outfit. It really, you got to have your act together to get their attention, and yet we've got their attention. We've got a pretty good rapport with them. And Gary Fineout is covering in Politico. Now, this is not the Tallahassee Democrat, which is a local paper. And of course, you'll never see this in the Gainesville Sun, the Mexican Sun. There's all this censorship that goes on around here, and you don't even know it because you don't know what you don't know. That's the issue with fake news and this and that. Yeah, it's not that you don't know it, it's that you don't know that you don't know it. Remember that. That's on the test. If I ask you that on a quiz, I say, what's the difference between you don't know it and you don't know that you don't know it? So that's the way it is. But meanwhile, in Tallahassee, an FBI agent who's been, you know, they've been dogging Gillum for quite a while. They followed him around to the theater in New York. They followed him down into the Caribbean and all those other places he went on the taxpayer's dime, allegedly. And the FBI had him wired up and all this. So there's an FBI agent in Politico, as I say, Gary Fineout has picked this up and is writing about it. So we're sharing it with you so that you'll know it. You won't get it from the Mexican Sun. Is at the center of a corruption investigation in Tallahassee. And he may testify in the ethics case against Democratic gubernatorial nominee Andrew Gillum, whom we just dodged a bullet on. And we could have wound up horror of horrors with him as the governor. Now, locally, one of the things that I've discussed with you is that GRU, who uses your money to support liberal causes without your permission, an excellent example we have of that is they're going to have some sort of scholarship deal, and they're going to have Gillum the speaker, and they're going to honor the Chestnut family. I don't think you could get birds of a feather together more like that crew, but that's okay if we're not being done, in my humble opinion, by the GRU people. Which is nothing more than supporting the propaganda of the left with your nickel. So here we have a guy who's going to be the guest speaker here, Andrew Gillum, who is being paid for by the GRU world, and yet he's got the FBI maybe going to testify, probably will, in the ethics case against him. And the lead state lawyer tasked with proving that Gillum broke the state ethics laws by accepting gifts from lobbyists ask an administrative judge to let the undercover agent Mike Miller, in quotes, so you'll never know really if Mike Miller is Mike Miller, I guess, to testify in the case. The lawyer Elizabeth Miller, who works for Attorney General Ashley Moody, asked the court in a filing to keep Miller's real identity secret and let him testify by phone. So the state's ethics commission, according to Politico and Gary Fineout, has concluded in January that there was probable cause. We reported that to you, that we were on the case of Gillum. Then we found out through the excellent detective work of Mark that Gillum's brother had registered in 2 different places as a legal residence, and that didn't compute. And that we discovered in a dog mauling case in Dallas, Texas, where Chris Chestnut was doing some ambulance chasing, and wasn't licensed to chase out there. So Gillum is, and Chestnut are very, very close. And as I say, Mama Chestnut is the godmother of Andrew Gillum. So I don't know how many close connections you can get in this deal. But Gillum, of course, he contends he's done nothing wrong. And I suppose, and I'm going to say this again, that some people have no sense of doing anything wrong. I mean, he probably says this with a straight face. I mean, lawlessness in some cultures is just accepted as a way of doing business. And we've been covering this for quite a while. We've got the Brazilian butt-lift bandit. We've got G.G. Simmons. We've got a bunch of people who have been on the other side of the law here, and it just seemed to be a way to do business. And you go on about it, and nothing's done about it. And we've got Stephen Yenderlung, these are not my pants, and we've got other things that are going on around the community. One of the things I've been told this morning, I haven't researched it yet, is that apparently there has been an application for a rap concert over here at the fairgrounds that the sheriff has turned down because the paperwork wasn't done in time. Let me tell you about these rap concerts. They're going to take place on the day after the Garth Brooks concert, and it was going to be a quote-unquote rap concert, you know, in that Easter weekend world. Let me tell you, this is a ruse. When I first became the city manager of Archer, I inherited this problem right off the bat. There was a similar situation going on in Archer, which was an Easter affair by day. By night, it was a rap concert, and by night, they poured out of Jacksonville and hither and yon to come to Archer to have this rap concert that went on uncontrolled all through the night. And the reason is there's no law in Archer. So when I got there, the people were about to riot. The people who went to bed at a decent time of night and paid the taxes and all this stuff and lived there day in and day out were being invaded by people who were coming in to inundate this area on Easter for a rap concert. I don't know of two things that are more incongruous than a rap concert and Easter. I mean, the two are diametrically opposite each other with all the filthy crap that comes out of the mouth of the rapsters, if they haven't plugged each other by then. And, you know, is coinciding with Easter. But anyway, apparently the paperwork got in late, and maybe the sheriff woke up and won't be duped like Jones was duped, and maybe Simmons can keep her nose out of the deal, and maybe it won't actually happen. I still got my doubts. I still think there'll be enormous pressure on the sheriff, the race card will be played, and people will say you're turning it down. That's what they did to me in Archer. I pulled two little old ladies in, black ladies, nice ladies, kind of people I've known all my life in the church and that. Wonderful ladies, and they were the people who put on the affair there in Archer by day. And I asked them, I said, ladies, you've never had to pull a permit to do this. You've never had to indemnify the city. So I'm the new sheriff in town. You're going to have to indemnify the city. You got to pull a permit, and you're going to have $1 million insurance policy in case something goes wrong. Well, the first thing they did, bless their hearts, was call me a racist. Nobody had ever treated them that way before. They'd never had to, you know, toe the line or anything like that. And I said, ma'am, that's the way it's going to be. You know me, I don't need any more friends if I ever had any to start with. And so I said, I don't mind the race card. Yeah, I admit to everything you want to call me. I'm, you know, the whole bailiwick. I'll just go ahead and say I'm guilty of it all. And go ahead and, you know, apply the rule here that, you know, indemnify the city. So eventually we got that done, and I said, furthermore, you got to pay for the porta potties, because, you know, the city was springing for that, so these people were getting away scot-free down there, and then there was all this trouble at night. So I'm familiar with these rap concerts. Believe me, they are a hotbed of trouble. They are potentially filled with all kinds of problems. And so we'll see how this works out. But what I'm saying is Gillum probably really might, maybe, having come from Gainesville, having come from this world of, you know, how could I do any wrong? These are not my pants. These are not my socks, this kind of stuff. I'll get deferred prosecution. I can have as many illegitimate kids, this kind of thing. He's come from this culture. So now he contends he's done nothing wrong, and he's going to challenge the findings in an administrative hearing. So this is something that was public a long time ago. This trip became public after the FBI corruption investigation into the Tallahassee city. Now let's do some factual stuff here. Here he is. He's corruption investigation in the Tallahassee city by the FBI, and our local sheriff still endorses him. Still endorses him for governor. And of course, the Democrat Party in Chestnut, what else would they do? They endorse him for governor. My point is this double standard thing. If this had happened with Trump, if this had gone on with any, I'm gonna hold this up now, but I'm gonna come back to it in a minute. Trump team overruled 25 clearance denials as if that was some big crime. It ain't no crime. That ain't no crime at all. Okay? The president has the ultimate power and has the ultimate highest security clearance you can get in the world. All right? So, this is the kind of stuff that really irks me. So we're going to see what happens with this. I still remain skeptical about whether or not ethics have any teeth in them. Gillum's going to say, who, me, what wine, where did I dine, that kind of thing. You're going to find that, he doesn't understand. Later on, we're going to talk about Uncle Joe Biden. Not only does Uncle Joe Biden doesn't know he crossed the line, he doesn't even know there is a line. And that apparently is the same kind of thing with Gillum. I mean, he not only does he not know he crossed the line, although I think he does. I'm fully sure he does. What he believes is when he crosses the line, nobody's going to capture him. The same thing with going on in immigration. When you take a kid and walk across the Rio Grande with it, then you're free. You're scot-free, and nobody's going to say anything to you about it. So that's kind of the world that we're dealing with here. So I wanted to open up with the fact that Politico has picked up on this thing with Gillum and is going to pursue it for us, and that's no lightweight pursuing that. Now, meanwhile, there's this censorship that goes on and goes on and goes on, and it doesn't ever abate. Now we've got a Chick-fil-A banned again. This time it's banned in Buffalo, if you haven't heard the news. And why is it banned in the Buffalo airport? It's because it is anti-LGBTQWXYZ. And since that's a big thing now that the Democrats use, they have no policies. They only have anger and resentment, and that's how they play it. So they're angry now that, the guy doesn't talk right about, that's what it is, it's a rhetoric. What's happened is Chick-fil-A has been banned from operating as a food vendor at the Buffalo Niagara International Airport after a Democrat New York assemblyman, and believe me, I'm going to tell you something, there are so many assembly people in New York and New York City and all this, one of the most tangled political webs you've ever seen. Everybody has got a neighborhood, and it's amazing. So it doesn't take but one of these guys to do this. It's amazing. After a Democrat New York assemblyman tweeted the restaurant supports anti-LGBTQ organizations. So here we go. Hospitality Management Company, Delaware North and Niagara Frontier Transportation Authority approved of plans to incorporate Chick-fil-A in its airport renovation things, and this guy, Democrat Assemblyman Sean Rand, called upon the authority to reverse its decision. One guy, one dude, and they buckle. You got to stop doing this, okay, conservatives? You have to stop doing this. I'm telling you, every day I report to you the kind of behavior that's going on the left that is held unaccountable. Nobody holds their feet to the fire about it at all. And yet you don't even talk right. And this is, got it under the broad category right now on our agenda of censorship. So Chick-fil-A is banned. But that's not the most horrific thing. We've known that before. This is one that, I knew was coming sooner or later. It has to be one of the next steps that the liberals succeed in doing with the college students. The students at Hofstra University in Long Island, New York. Okay, now that's the area right around in there where Amazon got run out. AOC is from and all that bit. Demanded on Friday, the students demanded, it's like children demand. Have you ever seen these kids while you're in a mall somewhere and the kid's whining and bitching and complaining and wants its mother to cave again and give it whatever it wants, popsicle, I don't know, you name it. And the mother does it. I mean, it's amazing. And I'm thinking to myself, that kid's going to grow up and be in somebody's classroom someday or be out on a picket line somewhere, and you're training it, mother, to go do these kind of things. Well, here we got them. We got grown-up students, if they call them grown-up. Hofstra University demanded on Friday that the school remove, are you ready for this? I knew it was coming, a statue of Thomas Jefferson. Huh? Arguing that it is not possible for the university to have the statue on campus while also being an institution. Are you ready for this? I am so sick of this phrase that prides itself on, say after me, diversity and inclusion. So the two are antithetical. They cannot coexist on the Hofstra campus, according to the students. Where do you think they got this chant from? They got it from their classrooms, all right? So they have concluded, and we'll see if the place buckles, and I suppose it will, that the statue on campus can't be there if you're going to also pride yourself on being diversified and inclusive. I said this yesterday, that it has invaded the faculty evaluation documents. Now they've included it, and they can't fire you for being a conservative, but they can fire you for creating a hostile environment. How do you create a hostile environment? You don't have diversity and inclusion. So then, get this, the students also called on the university to train its faculty and professors to behave in a more politically correct manner. Now, can you see them trying that on me? Jay, can you see that? Huh?
They'd have a boot up their butt.
I'll tell you what, I mean, have me behave in a more politically correct manner? You got the wrong dude now.
I can't even get you to behave.
Well, I mean, I'm not, people need somebody like me to stir things up. I mean, otherwise we just have this placid bunch of weak-kneed people wandering around, wouldn't we, Jay? Huh? Answer honestly now, son, honestly. But anyway, Jay, remember what I said today, what the little thing is, that, what was my little chant that I said the students must remember? Oh, I don't want to go there, huh? I can't. Well, I can't remember myself, so what the heck? You think I know what I'm saying here? Of course not. So anyway, they want the Thomas Jefferson statue to go into a museum. Into a museum, yeah? Huh? There you are. It's been subjected to acts of vandalism already. It stands in front of the University Student Center, a location that some students have expressed frustration over. They think this whole thing is just awful. Let me tell you something those students don't want to do. They don't want to read Notes on Virginia by Thomas Jefferson. Notes on Virginia. And Thomas Jefferson, at the time, with the scientific attitude he had about studying things, and if you've ever been to Monticello, you know that that whole place is lined out scientifically. It's not just a home, it's a place to study the relationship of the place to the universe, et cetera, et cetera. Well designed and all that, and of course it's been really crowded up upon by growth, but they've kept it, what it was, if you can imagine. The whole idea that he somehow wasn't one of the most learned and respected people of the time, as revisionist history looked at it, is goofy. I mean, like I say, it's not too long ago that we put butter on burns, and now we've learned that butter on burns is the worst thing you can do for burns. But if you read Notes on Virginia, you will really wonder what in the world. It's a thorough analysis of all sorts of things about race relations, and it's doesn't mince any words. Today, I suppose they'd throw it in a pile of flame and burn it. But so you're going to hold a guy in retrospect for something that was like holding baseball players, for example. I never could understand why baseball players had to sit around there and chew that disgusting tobacco and dip that snuff and that crap, and they sit. And here's what my theory is: they got so much time on their hands. In baseball, I call it bore ball. You've got so much time on your hands. And you have these peaks, you do. You have these, it's not a constant, energy level. I mean, you're out in the field and you're trying to keep your mind on your business and waiting for somebody to crack one out there for you. You got these long it's this long, painful game. I played it, I was a pitcher. I kind of liked the pitching because it was intriguing. You were involved every single moment in the game. Everybody else was standing around. So I noticed all these guys would chew the snuff and dip, and I thought, why in the world? I mean, what in the world is wrong with these people? And they had glazed eyes and everything. Well, are you going to go back and hold those people responsible for that? Because that was the thing they did then? No, you can't go back and do that. That's just what they did, They don't do it now, I guess. I don't know. Maybe they do. But it's something I sure wouldn't have. I've never seen a football. Maybe there's a guy that does it. But I never seen a guy do that. I never seen a basketball player do it. It's just a board ball player sitting around with nothing to do. So anyway, you have to examine on the situations. My point is inside the actual context of the event. If you had nothing to do and you were sitting on the pines, you'd be over there half buzzed too. I mean, come on. And a lot of guys actually sat over there hungover and played maybe better hungover. So, it wasn't a game that demanded a whole lot of conditioning, So, there it is. Anyway, this is the thing on Thomas Jefferson, and poor Thomas Jefferson. He's now being accused of everything that was absolutely they can dream up. So that's censorship. There's also such a thing as Twitter censorship. I get, Jay, you know about this. I mean, they have figured out that Trump used Twitter very effectively, and this is the first president we ever had who communicated daily, not just once but several times directly with the people. And of course, the libs are all over this. They can't control this. This is bugging the tar out of them. So they're going to go to the Zuckerbergs and these kind of characters who've invented these things and say, you ought to figure out a way to have an algorithm that can figure out a way when what he's saying is, what? When you run into a stone wall, or figure out a way when you figure out a way to what? I mean, really. It's another attack on the president. I mean, those attacks they're not going to go away because the left has nothing else to do, yet they don't apply them to themselves. Now, it's really kind of, well, I guess you could call it an interesting phenomenon if it weren't so dangerous and so absolutely. Here's one of the ones that really irked me, and I want to applaud one of the guys who watches the show. He's a member of the research team, tremendous fan of the show, and very, very, very helpful out there and helping us dig up things when we need things dug up. I'm keeping him anonymous, but he's a very good researcher for us. And he sent this to me because in college he had read a novel called A Separate Peace by John Knowles and thoroughly enjoyed it. And now CNN has revealed that one of the students has been complaining in a high school newspaper staff that at their school A Separate Peace was eliminated from the reading curriculum because one parent complained about so-called gay undertones in the book. Come on, are you serious? Let me give you a little background on A Separate Peace. Separate Peace was written by John Knowles, a very good friend of mine who is now passed. A Separate Peace was so widely accepted in the colleges as standard reading material because it didn't have one cuss word in it, not one. And the book that had come out just before A Separate Peace, which was enormously successful about initiations into manhood by adolescents, was of course A Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. And that one never could be accepted in the schools because it'd have this kind of language and that kind of language. And Holden Caulfield was a really kind of a fascinating character, by the way, a rough dude in terms of his criticism of people. Of course, he was an extension of J.D. Salinger. But so that book didn't make it out to the light of day quite a bit. But along came A Separate Peace by John Knowles, very acceptable work. And John made, and we all called him Jack. Jack made a healthy five-figure stipend every year off of that book once it was published in 1959. And he lived very well. He had a place in Fort Lauderdale. He had a place in Long Island, out near Montauk, he called the Tree House, and which was interesting because there's a tree in The Separate Peace. It's a very pivotal, meaningful part of the story. But the part, we got to be very good friends. He was a writer in residence here. He spent a lot of time reading my manuscripts and introduced me to some very important people in the literary world in New York. Just always wanted to help young writers. He told me that A Separate Peace was rejected by every publisher in the United States of America, and there are quite a number of them. And he wrote A Separate Peace 45 minutes before he went to work each day for Collier's magazine. He worked for Collier's magazine. He didn't have any time to work on this book. It was something he just had to do, though. It was compelling him to write about. And he wrote about it 45 minutes every morning, then went to work. And when it was finished, he couldn't get it published in the United States. So he sent it over to England, and England jumped on it right away, saw its virtues right away. Imagine that, being rejected by every publishing house in the country for writing a book that later becomes a classic. all right? That's what you learn when you're a writer. Rejection's part of your life. Rejection doesn't bother you at all. I mean, it just doesn't even faze you. So the book got printed in England, was a bestseller. Then it came back here in Random House with Bennett Cerf picked it up, and they started printing it, and man, it was away, and bang, it was off and running. Now, it was the standard reading of many, many college students in many, many places, and every college had a literature course. And now one woman, complains about, well, it was one parent complained about gay undertones in the book. You have to sort of really, it's kind of like I say, I go back to my story again about my buddy who saw hemp everywhere he looked. He even saw it in the rope hanging there with the flag on the flagpole. And of course Hamlet deals with this when Fortinbras asks him, where is this sight in Hamlet? And Horatio says, what is it you would see? In other words, you only see kind of what you want to see, all right? Everything else you exclude. So that's kind of my part of the agenda today on censorship. It is a constant battle. It is going on all around us, and it is something we need to very much protect. And I don't suppose, and it's just one more method of fighting that the Democrats are using and pitching and supplanting in the school for real, serious critical thinking skills. Now, I want to give you a follow-up on Fox. There is a big battle going on there. The Wall Street Journal has covered it. The police union has got involved with this and says that Fox must go, and you know what that's all about. They don't like the lady at all. They think she screwed over them, and that they're out, but they're being confronted. This is the interesting thing about this. There are a bunch of people who are with the police side of all this who are saying that Fraternal Order of Police, that Fox must go, and then there are a bunch out there saying, running the police down, saying the police have been brutal, and Smollett is a good example of it, and he was unfairly treated. The O.J. Simpson defense, basically. Then this is splitting Chicago right now, and it's splitting the blacks, and unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, there is no doubt going to be a black mayor, and it's going to be a black female mayor. It's all going to be never happened before in Chicago. So here the Wall Street Journal has a picture of these two contestants, and just as we predicted, and I didn't really understand it enough at the time we were running the story, how this getting rid of Smollett and sweeping under the rug would play into the mayoral contest. And so these two women are using this. One is saying, we need to get in there and really undercover, deal with black crime. And the other one's saying, no, black crime is a product of the cops. But meanwhile, the thing that cannot be denied, and this has been going on for a long time. By the way, do you realize this? The Illinois governor's in the jug still, I think. So this place is not a clean and happy place, Chicago. So here you've got an Illinois governor, the capital's in Springfield, is not in Chicago. So here you've got this thing going on, it's heating up, they're angry, arguing with each other, there's people in the streets, both black, at each other's throats, and that has got its own dynamics, and one blames the cops, and the other blames the blacks themselves, and they're black, and this, that, one, and another. It's being watched by a lot of people. But meanwhile, what the city is struggling with, and it's really the whole state, is its underfunded pension liabilities and its high murder rate. Those two things right now, and I haven't done this lately, but I think maybe somebody out there, maybe we'll do it if we get enough time, is whether the violence rate of incidents here in Gainesville have gone up just in, say, let's take a block of time, say the last 4 or 5 years. Everybody anecdotally tells me it has. That we've got more crime going on right now, more violent crime going on right now than we've ever had. So far, we haven't run into pension trouble. And that's basically because of Rick Scott and Republican conservative leadership that ran off Medicaid, because you couldn't have Medicaid and pension solubility being financially soluble too at the same time. So this is an issue they can talk all they want to about who did it, the cops or the victims, but you better address the pension problem. Now, it's got some real bad statistics in there that 1/3 of Chicago is black. That's 33%. That's a pretty good hunk. And you've got all of them really have been bought into and exploited and taken advantage of by the progressive left, which has used them as a voting bloc and takes them, as I say, for granted and done nothing for them. So you got this festering poverty, almost a third world country in the west side of Chicago, and they're arguing over who done it, the cops or the guy the cops got plugged. And meanwhile, I don't know how many shootings there were while they were arguing about it, but I guarantee you they didn't abate a bit. So that is really interesting. But Chicago's always been its own laboratory for weirdness. I mean, all the way back to Daley. And I was thinking of this yesterday, and those of you who've been around for a while will recall this. There was always the suspicion, there was always the accusation that the reason Jack Kennedy got to be the president was that his father, Joe Kennedy, paid off the Democrat political machine in Chicago, and that was enough to get Kennedy elected. Go back and research that. That was all over the news back then, that Kennedy got elected on a squeaker, and the investigations always suggested that the reason that he got by was because of the influence of his father, who paid off the Democrat political machine. So nothing really seems to have changed much. Meanwhile, the Smollett brothers are swearing that they told the truth. They're not kidding. Not the Smollett brothers, but the Nigerian brothers are swearing that they told the truth, that they didn't go astray. This is the honest to God thing. He paid with a check, as Charles Barkley said, don't ever pay with a check. And, went out and orchestrated this whole thing. And we're not going to be thrown under the bus like this and told that we're the culprits. We weren't the culprits. We did what the guy told us to do. So they're sticking to their story. And concurrently with this is Smollett lost the support of the NAACP. He never even showed up at their banquet. I think that's pretty interesting. So we've got he didn't get the Image Award for Outstanding Supporting Actor, and I'm told he didn't even show up. So there's some things going on here now. Meanwhile, there's evidence in an article by Thomas Sowell that he thinks that the blacks now support, about 40% of the blacks now support Trump, because he thinks that conservatism has come into fashion again. He calls it the long liberal failure. That's a good term. Put that down in your notes, Jay. You're going to need that on your exam, okay? I think that's the theme, the long liberal failure. It's been going on for 60 years. Thomas Sowell, who is a very intelligent black fellow, who, color doesn't matter. It's a quality of your critical thinking skills. And that's how we've always approached it, as I have anyway, as a classroom professor. I don't care if you're red, green, or brown, tall or short. How well can you think? And how much do you want to learn, and how are you accessible to learning, and you want to have open-minded conversations, malleable, and can revise. So anyway, Thomas Sowell calls it the long liberal failure, and I think Jay is going to make it the theme for today. That is what we're really talking about. When you pull all this together and synthesize it, we're talking about the long liberal failure, and it really begins with Lyndon Johnson. I swear, the more I think back on it, he never had a clue what he was doing. He was only put on the ticket to carry the South rather cynically by Kennedy. And then, of course, you had the unexpected turn of the events where Johnson was thrust into the saddle to lead the country and just couldn't handle it. And so he starts this great society and all this kind of stuff. And actually, all sorts of people who've studied this, who are objective thinkers and good thinkers, have concluded that that's where we ushered in entitlements. We ran off the father of the home in the black culture. We substituted it with the government. The government began to produce a failed family, when all along the strongest feature of any culture is its family. And so it destroyed the black family. And then on top of that, it really was interesting that it also destroyed the black school system, and it had to integrate. And I was talking with a very good friend the other day whom I respect. We're on the opposite ends of the political spectrum. There's no question about it. He's a black guy here in the community, well-known, good guy. And he and I share opinions, and we don't necessarily come from the same side of the aisle. But he told me that back when, and I always thought it was the federal government who forced the community to integrate and close down Lincoln High, the black high school here, right in the middle of the high school year, and force them over to Gainesville High. And that disrupted all those kids, and it should have. That wasn't fun for the kids. And we had riots and all that sort of business. I always thought it was the government that did it. It turns out it was one of the black reverends here, and I'm not going to say his name, but one of the very strong, and the NAACP, that actually engineered and pushed for the fracture of that right away and broke up the high school school year and created all that animosity. I'd never heard that story before, and I was all ears on it. I thought it was very interesting because it didn't come from the conservatives. It came from the liberals, and the blacks got used in it. So this is kind of interesting that the NAACP has dumped him, did not give him that award. So the headlines are that Jussie Smollett loses the NAACP Image Award for Outstanding Supporting Actor. You can go out and have a search on that and get that. The other thing that's really good that's going on is Omar is under investigation. Why not? I mean, she's running her yak, and so people are going to start looking at her. Everything's an investigation now. It's an investigation of the investigation by the investigators, right? Isn't that the way it works? So it's an investigation of the investigation by the investigators who are investigating the investigators. God, we ought to make a poem or a song about that, man. Maybe we could make a white rap song about it. Is that incongruent? Is there such a thing as a white rap? There's white rappers, right? I don't know, Jay.
They're better than the black ones, so.
There are some. Okay,
I hate knowing that, but yeah.
I'll be darned. Anyway, this Ilhan Omar, she's got a probe going on now, according to Daily Caller, into her campaign spending after complaints alleged that she misused contributions for personal use, and that came out on Monday. So the Minnesota Campaign Finance Board is investigating her after Minnesota Republican State Rep Steve Drazkowski filed 2 complaints alleging she spent nearly $6,000 in campaign funds for personal use while she served in the Minnesota legislature. That wouldn't surprise me. The Brazilian butt lift bandit made off with $93,000 and spent just 7 or 8 on her derriere. So some of these improper expenditures allegedly included payments to Omar's divorce attorney and travel to Boston and Estonia. So, we'll find out. There's been a long pattern of it, according to Drazkowski, and she hasn't followed the law. That doesn't surprise me. I'm back to this point I'm curious about. The long liberal failure is our theme today, and the long liberal failure has a failure to abide by the law. You can take a look at the immigration right now. They don't care about a law. It seems everywhere, and they work deals, deferred prosecution, or it gets swept under the rug, or somebody intervenes. And, Omar comes from that Democrat bunch, and they all circle the wagons and hug each other and make excuses for each other. I'm going to get into this headline here in a minute when I get to Trump in a second. There's so much to talk about today that is on our theme, on point. And we like to sort of discover the theme as we go. We took a look at the individual parts, and when the parts begin to fit together, we pull out of that some sort of commonality, and that's called inductive thinking. I love inductive thinking because it means you don't know what the point of all this is until you get into it and see a pattern. And that's the way real scientific thinking works. You go look to see if there's a pattern. The old thing about gravity is the best one you can think of. You let go of the pencil, and every time you let go of it, it drops, and it drops, and it drops, and you repeat it. After a while, you conclude that it will happen again and again and again, and if it happens in enough statistical reliability, it becomes what we call a law. But it's really just a principle that hasn't failed us yet. There's no such thing as a law, I suppose. Although Einstein would take argument with that, I think. Laws are flexible and malleable given to certain conditions that happen beyond our control. Climate change is one of them. Climate change is an excellent example of something over which we have no control. It's just the whole forces that congregate around the natural elements of the universe of which we are a part. That's the way it works. It's like trying to avoid the Grim Reaper. Grim Reaper will get you. Okay, you can't avoid that. So these campaign finance allegations come on the heels of a separate incident where she had to return $2,500 in speaking fees, and this was covered by something called the Pioneer Press. Yes, as Mark says, he's watching. Rules are for other people. They're not for these people. And by the way, it's always who's more at the cabbage. If do the rules apply to Biden the same way they applied to Kavanaugh? I'm going to cover that in a moment. Of course they don't. So she's being investigated, rightfully so. She's got the other cohort up there that I'll bet you if we turn enough rocks over on Rashida Tlaib, and I covered yesterday how dangerous that woman is when she put down that Patton woman who was there with Mark Meadows in the room and was called a prop. Man, what a terrible, nasty thing to say about somebody. And so meanwhile, Omar has tried to defend her anti-Semitic statements, as you might expose, and she evokes Allah to expose Israel's evil doings, etc. I don't want to belabor that, but that's where she is, and maybe, it wouldn't surprise me, that she'll come up with the same thing that Gillum comes up with. Well, these are not my shoes, these aren't my socks. I mean, I didn't know there was a law. Is there a law? Now, one of the things that really irked me yesterday, and I have to stop doing this, I was watching the news with my wonderful wife, and I was watching the ABC News, and of course it's very difficult for me to watch any television treatment of news because it's so superficial, and it's so much designed to stimulate an immediate response to get ratings. I mean, it's just so transparent to me, even the way in which they talk, the excited pressure they present things with. Oh my golly, we got a little breaking news. There's nothing breaking about it. Now, they started off yesterday. I just said, listen, and here's on the front of the Mexican Sun today. I'm going to hold this up. I think Jay can even clip it out for you. It just irks me so much. I mean, look, Trump team overruled 25 clearance denials. Huh? Trump team overruled 25 clearance denials. Let me ask you something. President Trump, or any president, has the highest security clearance in the world. President Trump knows or can know anything he wants to know. He has the code to the nuclear bombs. He knows everything, okay? The president knows everything. He is the highest authority for security, higher than much higher than those dimwits that are running around in the CIA who will betray you in a moment. Brennan and those characters. That Brennan should be locked up. They'll betray you in a heartbeat. So you're surrounded in a snake pit. And you come in, and who do you think's been running those security clearances low these many years? Obama's people. You go take a look, and you'll be surprised at what you find out, and I'll bet you a dime to a donut that you're going to find out in those security worlds. And I have a good friend, that's his business, security and security research. I'll bet you find that there's a lot of anti-Trumpers in that research, in that security deal. And so they make a recommendation to us, but they're not the ultimate authority. The ultimate authority is the President of the United States. And, you may sub out some of this stuff to somebody for lower echelon stuff, but if I want my team around me, and my team's in a room with me every day, and I'm the president, and I need to talk to you, and somebody down in the bureaucratic snake pit is keeping you from being able to talk to me, I'm going to take care of that. I'm going to take care of that, and any president would take care of it. You're talking about security leaks. Let's go to Clinton. So this is a very politically charged, misleading, biased type of thing that is dangerous. It goes on, and of course it stands to reason, does it not, that the stupid Mexican Sun would pick it up and make it a great big headline, huh? I mean, is that the way? This is what bugs me so much about this paper here, that they would, and then now, thank goodness, some Republicans have pushed back on this, and the Republicans, they cast doubts on the so-called whistleblower, alleging that nearly 24 White House aides were given security clearance despite initially being denied. So, you get accepted to college and you're initially denied, huh? So, some Democratic staff, this is according to the Daily Caller, Democratic staff revealed Monday. This is part of the constant war on Trump. Everything you can pick at him about. You can pick at him about security clearances. You can pick at him about repeatedly until you get this stuff out to the news media and try to wear these people down. Well, the whistleblower is a manager in the White House personnel office. I'm going to tell you something. She'd be on the highway right now picking up paper in one of those DOC jackets. The Democrats, and this is what the GOP lawmakers, and they jumped at Trump's defense right away, are misusing and manufacturing a misleading narrative that the Trump White House is reckless with national security. That's what is being promoted. That's what is being promoted. That's what they're trying to say with this headline. Okay? This Gainesville Sun mullet rapper Mexican son should be embarrassed. I'm going to start a fire with that dang thing. Huh? They are trying to say that the Democrats are trying to put in your mind that Trump is reckless with national security. Don't you remember when Obama leaned over to Putin and said, as soon as I'm elected, I can really talk to you? You remember that, Jay? Yeah, you were around for that. So they are using this information from a low-level clerk, and the doggone ABC News picks this up and makes it a screaming headline, okay? A screaming headline. In reality, when you go look at it, according to the Daily Caller, you can't find any knowledge that this woman has over the particulars of the security clearance at all. I had to get that in there today. I had to get that in there today. Uncle Joe. Uncle Joe. Uncle Joe. What a numbskull. He's always been a numbskull. Uncle Joe, I wonder about this if you guys, a lot of families have had a crazy uncle. And so Uncle Joe probably fits that mold. Oh, is he groping? Is he doing that? Oh, okay. Oh, Uncle Joe. Uncle Joe, and I don't have it. Somebody showed me a collage yesterday, an animated collage of all the women. He likes to sneak up behind them. And, well, that's not normal. I'm just going to tell you right now, that's not normal. And there's some real serious things, though, that now is going to come out about Uncle Joe. This groping thing is going to lead into a bigger discussion and look at him. There is a flashback that the Daily Caller has dug up right away about how Biden talked about the Kavanaugh accuser. Now, here are the accusers that are accusing Biden. Biden's sweeping under the rug, right? Oh, well, I've always been somebody who liked to, grab ass or whatever it is. I always liked to, I kind of do that. It's just the way I did it and all that. And I don't mean nothing by it. And, the guy doesn't know what he means something by. So now, of course, I didn't do nothing inappropriate. He doesn't know what appropriate is. But in an interview on the Today Show in September 2018, let's put this in the record, students. Biden was asked what he thought of the allegations against Brett Kavanaugh and how senators should proceed with the then upcoming hearing featuring Brett Kavanaugh and one accuser, Christine Blasey Ford, who was really Biden also told the host that Ballsy Ford should not have to go through what Anita Hill went through. And old Uncle Joe was the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee then, and he claims that if he just could have done something about it, he would have, really let, and the reason is that they didn't want Clarence Thomas, a conservative, on that thing. They were willing to use Anita Hill. But old Uncle Joe, he didn't have the ability to actually make enough persuasive authority based on real truth to change the direction of that committee's results. So Uncle Joe, there's your double standard. There's your, thing that he's going to get trapped in more and more and more. And so he's got this thing about Kavanaugh that's there. Now, this is not including all the women. He's got a serious thing going on right now that I think is going to be much more relevant. And that has to do with his son. And this is from The Hill. And Joe Biden's 2020 Ukrainian Nightmare is the title is. And this is the deal. 2 years after leaving office, Joe Biden can't resist the temptation to brag on an audience of foreign policy specialists about the time as vice president that he strong-armed Ukraine into firing its top prosecutor. Biden got to Ukraine to fire its top prosecutor. This was in 2016, and this was really, really murky. He threatened Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko in March 2016 that the Obama administration would pull $1 billion in U.S. loan guarantees, sending the former Soviet republic into insolvency if it didn't immediately fire this prosecutor, Viktor Shokin. And Biden told the guy, quote, "You're not getting the billion. I'm going to be leaving here in, I think it was about 6 hours." And I looked at him and I said, "I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money." Well, then he said in the interview, well, son of a bitch, he got fired. And they put in someone who was solid at the time. Now, what really is going on is that his son was involved with some gas business there that the Ukrainian officials were looking into some hanky-panky with. So the crucial piece of information that Biden has omitted is that the prosecutor got fired. He was leading a wide-ranging corruption probe into the natural gas from Burisma Holdings that employed Biden's younger son, Hunter, as a board member. So the U.S. banking records show Hunter Biden's America-based firm, Rosemont Seneca Partners, LLC, received regular transfers into one of its accounts, usually more than $166,000 a month, from Burisma from spring 2014 through the fall of 2015, during a period when Vice President Biden was the main U.S. official dealing with Ukraine and its relations with Russia. Now, people ask me all the time, boy, what about these doggone politicians? How is it they go to Washington poor and come out with money? Right there is an indication. This Uncle Joe has been wandering around uselessly for years in D.C. He's been an automatic shoo-in out of his district. He's got nothing accomplished. He's just one of those guys who shows up here and shows up there. I think Obama picked him because he was benign and wouldn't have any kind of competition with Obama on the stage. But behind the scenes, Obama was using this guy or letting this guy use his office to feather his own camp, which in this case was to take a look at how his son prospered from his being the vice president. Now, I got to tell you, don't you believe that if this were Trump, that all hell would break loose? This never got out into open. Now it's coming out because of Uncle Joe groping the women. People have decided to go back and take a little closer look at Uncle Joe to see how he really behaves. So The prosecutors had identified Hunter Biden and the business partner Devin Archer and their firm, Rosemont Seneca, as the potential recipients of this money. So there it is. What happened? You draw your own conclusions. Biden went and got the prosecutor fired by saying, hey, we're not going to give you $1 billion. That's a lot of money if you pursue this. What do you call that? Extortion? I mean, it ain't right. I don't know what else you would call it. Meanwhile, I mean, that I think is one of the more serious things. His behavior with the women is just, I mean, you know, it's going to be around on the joke trail for a long time. It's just so disgusting. I mean, the sneaking up behind the women and smelling the hair. I mean, you know, I've known a lot of creepy guys in my life who got really bad pickup lines. And, you know, we had a local guy who was that way, Knee Block. He just was a lousy groper, and he used his office. I mean, come on, man, use your wit. Have you got any wit and charm? And can't you use that instead of your political office? And can't you, well, that's the way it works with these guys. And of course, she got mad. I don't think this is a hyperbole. I mean, you have got mad Maxine. Mad Maxine. She is, of course, all the charges against Smollett should be dropped. That's one thing. No problem there. Get that out of the way. Look at that woman. And then the other is, oh, well, Biden, you know, this don't mean nothing. You know, this is not, there's nothing to this. Get along, little doggy. There's nothing to see here. So she's, you know, meanwhile, she's howling, literally howling for the Trumpster to walk the plank. Huh? That long liberal failure. I think that's what you're seeing the death throes of, I hope. In the middle of all this stuff, people want to know how this happens so many times in our culture. I don't know what the relationship is of this, but I thought I'd put it into our notes today, students, that there is something called men's, are you ready for this? Jay, you probably need to go to this. Men's cuddling group.
Oh my God.
Jay, come on, man. You need to start one on the University of Florida campus. Huh? Men's cuddling group. And what's the purpose of the cuddling group? To end toxic masculinity. Toxic masculinity. Look, I'm toxic. Look. Toxicity personified. Here I am. Toxicity. You're looking at it. Huh? Get my manly picture up there. Where is it? There it is. There's toxic masculinity. Ah! Eat your heart out. I would never join, or need to join, or need to form, or need to head a men's therapeutic cuddle group. That's what it's called. To fight toxic masculinity. And the way you're supposed to fight it is you cozy up to one another. Huh? This isn't a Philadelphia Inquirer. Don't laugh. It's coming your way, Jay. Huh? The group is formed to combat toxic expressions of masculinity and heal past trauma. So Uncle Joe needs to go to what? Uncle Joe needs to, look at this, look at the toxic masculine man there in front of the Masculine Goals gym. So, golly, I mean, you know, look, I mean, then and now, there it is. Oh, God. Are you sick? The cuddle group was established to allow men to be more vulnerable.
You know, I was going to try to find a picture to put up with that, but I'm not looking that up.
Well, whether you know it or not, Jay, you have been indoctrinated to believe that showing your emotions is a sign of weakness. How dare you? If you don't
sure.
If you don't bawl once in a while, you're not a manly man.
Yeah, sure, Ward. When I'm fighting some guy, I'm going to show my emotions.
You are?
Screw that.
Oh. Let's see, here's the positions that they get to do. It starts out with hand holding. Now, come on. I'm not kidding you. Hair stroking.
Oh my God.
Come on, this is where Uncle Joe gets it. Beard stroking. Beard stroking. Huh? I don't want to. The rest of it you need to. Oh, well. One man, the holder, sits on a pillow on the floor with his back against a wall or sofa. The second man, the one being held, sits in front of the holder, facing forward, so his back rests on the holder's chest, his head on the shoulder, and the holder will embrace the man around the chest, and in time maybe ask for additional forms of affection, such as hand holding, come on man, hair or beard stroking, back rubbing. Come on now, get with it, brother. Huh? Hand massages.
Just stop.
Okay, I'm stopping. Well, we're out of time, or I'd go on. Huh? Come on. There you go.
Our fathers are rolling in their graves.
There you
and
are.
I'm about to throw up.
My old man would never go for that in a heartbeat. That's why I'm so screwed up, right? I had a manly man for a father. It has to be the reason. Look at Uncle Joe. Look at Uncle Joe. Got the picture up there. Look at him. Look at him. Look at him. He's working it. He's working it. He's working it. Work it, Joe. Work it, Uncle Joe. Ha ha ha. Hey, that Trump team is lax. It's lax with the security of this nation. You know who's lax with the security of this nation? And Gowdy said it. They won't give to the intelligence committee that Bug Eyes is on. They want him off of there because he gets to see some of the stuff, and he ain't got enough sense to keep track of what he's got. We got to quit. We're having too much fun. Warthog Command Center out.
Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America.
Do you want to put your business in front of 10,000 new customers? Visit wardscottfiles.tv today for more information on our advertising opportunities.